pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front row. Painted faces, mass of stone. A hollow laugh that chills the bone. Puppets dangle strings unseen. Life's a trick, a cruel machine. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Or just believe it? Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front.
Welcome back to Breaking the System. Today, we were told that modern school system was a ladder or way for our children to climb toward the American dream. But when we look at the data, look at the eyes of the students, look at the rising rates of things like anxiety and collapsing test scores and the biological fog, right? And so, is that really climbing toward the American dream? This ladder is and was a mirage. The system has been repurposed into an enclosure from the lobbying boardrooms of Big Ag to the algorithmic labs of Silicon Valley. Our children have become the product, their product, a version of what they would like to sell to the rest of society. Over the next half hour or so, we're going to talk about and try to dismantle the final wall of the cage. We're going to look at the glass in their hands and the cameras on the wall. This is episode 12, the Digital Panopticon. So let's look at the neurochemical siege first. In 2025, we finally have the smoking gun of data. For years, Silicon Valley executives sent their own children to these low-tech Waldorf schools while selling your school district, the idea of a one-to-one tablet initiative, right? And especially during COVID, this happened a lot because a lot of kids were attending school at home. They were doing remote learning, and a lot of schools bought into this one-to-one, whether if it's through a laptop or a Chromebook or a phone or what have you, right? This one-to-one tablet initiative. And they knew what we are only admitting to now, that the smartphone is very detrimental. And it is a neurological disruptor. Okay. So why are phones biologically toxic? Well, if we start looking at the gray matter in our brains, and so there was a study that was done this year through MRIs that have confirmed a reduction in GMV, which is gray matter volume, in the caudate nucleus and the cerebellum of people, particularly our children, in heavy smartphone usage. These areas that we're talking about, they're responsible for executive function and the reward processing. So we aren't just distracting them, we are physically altering the brain's ability to plan and to think. Okay? And so this brings us into like the proverbial slot machine, right? The dopamine, so to speak, for kids. Every notification is a variable reward, and it triggers a spike in dopamine that the adolescent brain, specifically the still developing frontal cortex, is biologically unable to resist, right? So think about your kids. Every time a notification goes off, right? How often do they run to their phone and pick up their phone, right? Can they let that phone just sit there, or do they have to go pick it up? Okay, that's what we're talking about. This unalienable desire to run to the phone and pick it up, and they just can't resist that. So this UNESCO's 2025 reports highlighting the refocus tax. It takes a student an average of 20 minutes to regain deep focus after checking a phone. In a standard school day, a child who checks their phone just 3 times per class is effectively in a state of permanent cognitive impairment, right? So every time they check their phone, it takes another 20 minutes. Okay, they check their phone again, it takes another 20 minutes. They check their phone again, it takes another 20 minutes. So now we're 60 minutes in, and how many classes of our children are set up in 60-minute intervals? They're not. Most of them are set up around 40, 45, okay? So they're being cognitively impaired the whole class period, okay? And this was a study they just done this year. So people are kind of like starting to see this, and there is this almost this revival that's happening in parents and educators and schools and systems and wanting to go to this phone-free place. And so we were told that banning phones would cause chaos or unsafe issues, right? Provided by the people on the opposite end of the spectrum, the opposite end of the aisle, so to speak. In that, what's going to happen if there's like this thing that happens at school and I need to get a hold of my kid and I can't call my kid directly, or I can't text my kid directly and they can't pick up automatically? Like, okay, who cares? It's never been an issue in all of education ever before. So like, why would it be an issue now? Just because you think that, you know, that technology is better, and that everybody has a phone in their pocket, that you just need to be able to get a hold of your kid at a moment's notice. Like, call the school, right? Call the secretary, okay? And so this breakthrough that we're going to talk about comes from Florida. The National Bureau of Economic Research, or NBER, released a study this year on Florida's district-wide phone bans, and the result was pretty stunning. So after 2 years, schools with strict bans saw a 1.1% boost in accountability scores. And you're like, oh, that's only 1.1%. That's not much. That's, in the education system, that's massive. A 1.1% boost is massive. Increasingly, boys who are historically more prone to externalizing screen-induced ADHD. Remember, we talked about this the other day. In the way that boys' and girls' brains are wired, just a little bit different. Okay, they are not the same, and boys have a harder time with ADHD. That the boys showed the most significant academic gains or changes. So if we're wanting to see boys increase test scores, what do? Well, we get rid of the phones, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And so that with this, there is this paradox, this discipline paradox, in that suspensions spiked in year one as students went through what they called a literal neurochemical withdrawal. Okay. But shortly after that year, disciplinary incidents fell below pre-digital levels. So what this is telling us is that, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a kickback initially, particularly by the students and by certain parents, in that they all think that they have to have an electronic device in them or on them 24/7. Okay, but we're finding out is that is not the case. And after about a year of being whittled off of having an electronic device 24/7, is that we can kind of fix ourselves, right? The incidences in discipline go down, okay? In New York, they seen what they called a lunchroom renaissance. In Brooklyn's Midwood High School, the 2025 ban led to what educators are calling the social revival. Hallways that were once silent, screen-lit morgues are now loud with chess matches, debates, and face-to-face eye contact. That's a huge one. A lot of kids today have issues with face-to-face contact. You know, a lot of kids won't even call each other. What do? They text each other because they have anxiety about calling and talking to other people. And it's like, if you want to talk to somebody, just call them, right? If they want to talk to you, they'll pick up the phone. You're not having this 20-minute, 30-minute, 2-hour text messaging back and forth. Just call them. But there's a lot of anxiety with kids nowadays to do that. And especially if they have to have like this face-to-face contact where they actually have to have a conversation. And so when you remove the social media machine, whatever that is, okay, tablet, phone, computer, whatever, the social pressure cooker of high school finally begins to vent. And it's almost like you force through their environment, right? You force the kids to start talking with one another, to have those interactions, the face-to-face conversation, right? Get them out of their digital electronic norms, so to speak, and back into talking to a real person. And that brings us into our next segment, the surveillance state, in that is AI watching us 24/7? Okay, and that's kind of an ongoing debate, and whether and that's a whole topic onto itself. And then ask yourself, critically think, like, is all of this information that AI is collecting on us, is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Who's running those tech departments, those companies, those corporations, on all that information that they're gathering on us? But that's another whole episode in itself. But so while phones are going back into the lockers, the system is installing something far more sinister, right? In late 2025, schools in the states from California to New York are developing AI-powered video analytics. And like I said, we've talked about this heavily. So there is a new panopticon that is developing. At schools like Beverly Hills High, AI cameras don't just record, they analyze. And they scan for these anomalies of things like aggression and loitering, and kids being in these unauthorized zones, or it's made to map out signs of distress within the student body. Okay, and so it comes up with these predictive policing policies. These systems use facial recognition and body language analysis to assign risk scores to students before they even walk into a classroom. Okay, so that's what this AI model is doing in some of these classrooms. And I'm not saying that this is happening in every public school across the board, but it is happening in some public schools within the United States. So that is something to be aware of. Okay. And so school-issued devices are now loaded, or can be loaded, with AI that monitors their every keystroke. And in 2025, this data isn't just for safety, it's being compiled into what they're using to create student profiles that may eventually follow your child into the workforce. And that in itself, I just don't know if I think that that's a good thing or not. I mean, because I'm a pretty tech savvy person myself, and so I love technology. But the older I get, the more demonic that I see that it can be if, how, and when it's used. Okay? And I know in my classroom, when I teach, the phones go in, or the children's phones, the students' phones, go in basically a lockbox. And they don't get them back till the end of the day. Okay, till they walk out of the class to go home. But they do have one-to-one Chromebooks that they're able to use. But that Chromebook is no different than pen and paper. Okay. So when they complete an assignment or they're working on an assignment, they have the option. Every single assignment, they have the option. Do I want to use pencil and paper, or do I want to use a Chromebook? And there are certain things that we try to teach them with AI, in that AI will not, or you will not use AI to write the story for you, but you can use AI to help you in writing the story. So the students have to come up with their own ideas, and they have to start what's called the input process of AI. So they come up with like the setting, the people, the place, the overall plot, the story, what's going to take place. And then from there, they can use AI to help them to kind of spice up the meat and potatoes, the body of their writing, in not only teaching them how to phrase certain things, but to work on sentence structure, to work on capitalization, punctuation, spelling, all of those things that a lot of our students, a lot of our kids are struggling with nowadays, and they can see those mistakes that they're making, and they can fix those mistakes in real time. So like AI doesn't do that for them. It can. It depends on how the teacher is teaching it. I'm just saying, I know in my classroom that's the way that we do it. Okay, and I'm not saying that's the right way, not saying it's the wrong way. I'm just saying it's the way that we use AI. But going back to this, putting on our critical thinking caps, is it a good idea to have AI that monitors our students, that monitors our children, and information is being compiled on that particular person that will follow them into the realm of adulthood, into the realm of the workforce, so to speak? And is that a good idea? Part of me says yes, and part of me says no. In that what we do as kids, for the most part, should not follow us into what we're doing as adults. In that our bodies are different, our minds are different, we're a completely different person as a young person, as a young adult. We're completely different then than we are when we're a grown-up. Okay? The way that we think, our mannerisms, everything is completely different. So what we do as a kid should not follow us, I don't think, should follow us into adulthood, into the workforce. Okay? So that's something to be aware of, that is happening in some schools. So how do we fix it? What is the proverbial firewall that we can put up, so to speak? And so the kicker is that you cannot wait for the federal government to act, right? And so those of us that are starting to put our critical thinking caps on, and we're actually starting to think for ourselves again instead of the government thinking for us, on any topic, any idea across the board, you should not ever wait for the federal government to act on your behalf. Because when the federal government acts, whose benefit are they going to act on? And it's going to be for the government themselves. Let's just be honest. Okay? Be honest with yourself in knowing that when the government does something, it's going to benefit the government in one way, shape, or another. Okay? So you cannot wait on the government to fix these things for us or to fix these things for you. You have to act as an individual. So you must build what they're calling the digital firewall of today. And so how do we do that? Well, we want to look for proverbial warning signs. If your child feels a buzz when the phone isn't near, their neural pathway has been hijacked. All right? And some of us are like, oh, I think my phone just went off. And so like when you reach down in your pocket and your phone's not there, that's what they're talking about. In that your body is so used to your phone going off, right? If you've got it on silent or if you've got the vibration set, right? You're constantly feeling that buzz, that notification on all of your social media platforms. And the more social media platforms that you have and the more friends that you have, the more buzzing that's going to occur. And so the more that this phantom vibration syndrome, or, if you want to put an acronym, PVS, right? People love to have acronyms. PVS, phantom vibration syndrome. And it is a real thing, okay? And like I said, the more that you are intertwined with tech, the more that this will affect you because the more that it happens on the daily basis. And the next warning sign that we should look for is with our children developing social withdrawals. So a child who prefers the weak social bonds of things like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, okay, over developing and maintaining a strong social bond or multiple bonds with friends and with family and with coworkers, in the locker room, in the hallway, at the dinner table, right? When they prefer to jump online rather than sit down and, shoot the shit, if you can say that, okay, then we have a social, we're creating a social withdrawal, and that's a crisis within that student or that person that we need to be looking for. So what's the plan? Well, some schools have a locker mandate, and that is that they demand that your school, or as a parent, you can demand that your school implement a bell-to-bell plan or ban. Phones and backpacks don't work, right? If it's in my backpack, oh, I hear it, I hear that vibration, or I wonder if my phone went off, like, you're going to have that your brain is going to have that cognitive pull towards your phone, towards your tablet or whatever it is, right? Because it's literally sitting just inches away from you, and just you thinking about that reduces your IQ by about 10 points, okay? And you can look all these things up. These are different studies that they've been doing in the last 2 to 3 years. Okay, so having the phones in the backpack, having them next to our students within the education doesn't work. Okay. What other kind of plan can we put in place? What about the no phone rule, where we have no smartphone before the age of 14, right? And myself as a parent, I look back and I'm thinking, I've thought about this to myself multiple times. in that I should have waited. I should have waited till my kids were a little bit older before I got them phones. And I wish I would have waited. 100%. 100% wish I would have waited. And so if we can start having this no smartphone ban in place up into age 14, and then from age 14 to 16, like, so we've got them a phone, right? Us as parents, we're the ones paying for it for the most part. What are they allowed to do on it? Basic calling and texting, right? No social media before the age of 16. So let's just ban all social media from our young adults up until the age of 16, period. Okay? That would be nice, but do you think that big tech is going to buy into that? Do you think that if we bring this to the table that T-Mobile and AT&T and Verizon and all of these cell phone places are going to put these bans into place, just like cigarettes and like alcohol and marijuana and certain things where you have to be a certain age before you're allowed to get those? I don't think that will ever happen. Like, you're still gonna have to go in with a parent and sign, because your parent has to be a legal guardian in paying that bill. Okay, so I don't see if the phone companies doing a ban on those types of things. So that's gonna have to come from us, the parents. And also data sovereignty, and this is a big one. The more that we use AI and the more that we integrate our lives into this all-tech society is your data. What is happening to your data? Okay? And by data, we're no longer talking about things like your name and your address and your phone number. Okay? Data. Behavior patterns. What are you buying? When are you buying? Who you're buying from? They look at every little nuance that AI can record, and that is your data profile. Okay? Are you buying off Walmart? Are you buying off Target, Amazon, eBay? What are you buying? How much and when? And is it food? Is it cleaners? Is it chemicals, like clothing? What are you buying? And that is all being compiled, not only on us, but on our children. Okay? So we as parents, we need to demand that their school district, your school district, provides an opting out for AI behavioral tracking. Your child's facial data belongs to them. It belongs to you as a parent, as a guardian, and not some third-party security contractor, right? And when we think about this, it's not the school system, right? I mean, the school system is part of it, but they're not this third party. They're not the company that is typically hired on to run this AI in tracking our children's behavior or doing the facial recognition. That is a separate entity in itself. And now that entity, whoever it is, whether if it's Google or OpenAI or Grok or whatever it is, right? Because there's all kinds of different companies out there, okay? What company is that school using, and how are they using your child's information? Okay? That's extremely important. You as a parent need to know that. And if you don't like it, opt out of it, okay? And if they don't have an opting out policy, if it's that important to you, well, it's time to start thinking about moving to a different district or moving to a different state or enrolling your child in a different school, right? Opt them out one way or another, okay? So in conclusion to all of this, it kind of brings us back to an analog revolution, so to speak. And I'm not talking about a total analog revolution. So when we think about this, we've covered the biological poison that we talked about on the lunch tray, the political capture of the curriculum that we've talked about, and then today the digital enclosure of the mind, not only with the phones and the tablets, but in the school themselves, and being able to digitally record and having facial recognition and data and tracking our children, so that data can be compiled upon them for later on in life, right? All of this can feel a little overwhelming. It can feel like the system is too big to break. But remember this, the system is entirely dependent on your participation. How much do you want to participate, right? Nobody's making you use Google. Nobody's making you have an email address, right? You don't have to have one. You got snail mail, okay? You still have a actual physical address that you can get stuff sent to. You don't have to play in their shenanigans in their games. You don't have to DoorDash your food, right? Drive there yourself or make a home-cooked meal, right? You don't have to participate in parts of these systems. You just don't have to. But a lot of people will choose to, and why is that? It's easy, right? It's easy. It's easy for me to DoorDash my food. It's easy for me to click a couple buttons and someone delivers my Walmart to my door, and I don't have to get out, and I don't have to socialize with people, and I don't have to do these things, right? It makes life easy, okay? But you become compliant in the process of doing that. So think of it like this. Every time you pack a real lunch, every time you take the glass out of your child's hand, every time you demand that they be taught as a human soul rather than a data point, you are committing an act of revolution. And you truly are. So breaking the system only works if we, should phrase that a different way. Us not being able to break the system only works if we stay asleep. Okay? But in 2025, and I really do think that 2025 was kind of a year of an awakening across multiple different platforms, multiple different vendors, all throughout society. It was like a ripple effect. And we can start looking at our schools, and the hallways are starting to get loud again. And so this analog resistance has begun. How far do we want to take this, right? Like I said, I'm a huge tech person. I love tech, but it's not the end-all be-all. You still need that person-to-person communication. As a human being, you need another human. You need that physical touch. You need to be able to look somebody in the eye. You need to be in the same room with someone, breathing the same air, right? You need, as a human, you need to have other humans around you, okay? Otherwise, you develop things like depression and anxiety. You try to distance yourself more socially. You become like a hermit. And when we think about those things, as a child, none of that is good at all. I mean, it's not good as an adult, but it's really not good as a child because it really will hinder them a lot in the years to come. So, with that, think of the analog resistance. Think of what can you do. Think of how are you protecting, or how can you protect your child. What are some steps that you can take? Put on your critical thinking cap, okay? Don't rely on the government. Protect your mind. Reclaim the future. Reclaim your children. Okay? Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. This is Breaking the System. Have a good day and peace. See you guys.